We got to talk about Aaron Schock because this thing is it's fascinating. The sort of implosion here. This is the least interesting part of the story, although it could be the funniest part of the story from my perspective. It's Barney Frank.
I think we should really talk about him in the funny parts at this point because everything else has been discussed.
Well, Barney Frank apparently has come out and said, Barney Frank was one of the first. I think he was the first or maybe the second. Was it Gary Studs? He was the second open congressman to come out of the closet. And he said he wrote a piece, I think it was this week. He's got a book that's coming out about the difficulties of keeping his sexuality private for so many years. But he said today...
You mean Aaron Schock has that book coming out?
Well, he said, Barney Frank said that if Aaron Schock is gay, he should be exposed due to his voting record on gay issues. And this is what he said, this is a quote. When you're in public office and you vote opposite to the way you live your life, no, I don't think you have privacy. Anyone who's gay and votes in an anti-gay fashion has, it seems to me, lost their right to privacy because he's been converted to a right to hypocrisy. And then he went on to say, noting Schock's toned physique, and Barney Frank has a way where it says, you spent entirely too much time in the gym for a straight man.
I think that's exactly true. And if you saw some of those wonderful outfits that he wore, which I had some great conversations with gay friends, who were quite openly asked me, like, would you ever wear something like that? And I said, I wouldn't have the inclination to. It looks nice, but, and that's fine, but he should be proud of who he is. And I think, and for what Barney Frank said there, it reminds me, are you friends also, Sam, with Mike Rogers?
Yes.
Mike's a friend of mine. And of course, he did a lot of the work, and this was always his principle too, when he was part of part of who, there were others too, but he was part of outing Larry Craig and Foley, Mark Foley, and a few others during that period of time. And he always said, there are those that we know who are gay, who are not public about it, but who are terrific on our issues, and we will never do anything to harm or expose them. But you've lost that right when you're busy, when you're attacking my life, when you're saying I can't be married and have the hundreds of different, economic benefits and personal benefits that go with that. When you're saying that I can't be in the military, considering that that's a way for many people in this country to be able to afford to have an education. Whether that should be is a whole other conversation, but that's the way it is. And he was against, lifting the ban and getting rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So at that point, you've harmed people's lives, and you've harmed people's lives for the crime of likely, almost definitely, in my opinion, being just the way you are. And so if you then at that point want to hide it, I'd say it's open season, on that guy. And I don't know if anyone will bother, and I don't know that he's worth it. But if he's free to do some consulting on how to decorate an office, mine is really not looking that good here.
Well, people should know. I don't know how much people have actually followed this story. We haven't really talked about it much at all on this program. But this was a guy who first, I think, sort of made headlines because his congressional office apparently had been remodeled to look just like Downton Abbey. I had never watched that show, so it basically, I think what does it take place in the 1800s?
Yeah, I haven't watched it either.
I've never really even gotten the appeal, quite frankly.
No, none of us know here, but it doesn't look like. Let's put it this way: it doesn't look like. It doesn't look like Walking Dead, a Walking Dead set. Apparently, it's a lot more pristine. And then apparently, people started digging into his records, and they saw that he was going hog wild. He charged the government 90,000 miles or 150,000, something like that.
That was my personal favorite.
He got reimbursed
he did
for
a lot of things. He had trips on private jets.
Yep.
He never reported his gifts and sent people to World Series or I don't remember, was NFL Super Bowl, some sort of sporting events. I just can't remember which ones, which also were gifts and that kind of thing. But yeah, that was my personal favorite, where he had the only car he owned for 5 years, and he when he sold it back to one of his campaign biggest campaign donors in his district who sold him this car, I'm sure, at a cheap rate to begin with, and bought it probably for more than it should have been bought for when he bought it back. The number on the odometer was 80,000 miles, and yet somehow he asked for reimbursement from the government for 170,000, which is a 90,000 disparity. And where are we these days? 55 cents per mile, something like that. Being the fair, you can do the math on that. He ripped us taxpayers off some money, and I thought right-wing Republicans always were concerned about ripping taxpayer money off. So it's weird. I don't get it.
Well, here's a guy who I think just got very excited. And the reason why it's important is this guy is not just some backbencher who we would have never heard of. This guy was considered an up-and-coming, I mean, people were talking about this guy.
They were putting him into leadership already.
They were talking about this guy 4 to 8 to 12 years out as a potential presidential candidate. And so I don't believe will be that now.
No, but maybe he'll be much happier in his personal life. Because there are also others who have made the argument that there are some who are more closeted than others. And apparently in the manner in which this man handles his finances, he also wasn't very secretive or careful about his personal life when it came to certain D.C. bars, such that I don't think it was going to be a challenge for people to out him. So he may actually benefit from the fact that he liked having his hand in the cookie jar and taking taxpayer money for nice jaunts abroad and stuff too, because he'll be able to prevent the eventual outing in quite a public way that I'm sure would have happened at some point.